Thank you very much for coming to Five Arts Center, where today we will be having this exploring dramaturgy event. Yeah, I mean, this event is really part of a longer series of what we call critical conversations that we have been trying to initiate since last year, to kind of look at under the radar areas in the performing arts that maybe need a bit more attention, a bit more thought, a bit more discussion. So in the Georgetown Literary Festival last year, there was a panel called Interrogating the Arts Through Writing, where we had Charlene Rajendran, who you will hear more from in a second, and TK Sabapati, the art historian, talk about the work of writing, critiquing, thinking about the arts in public, and it was moderated actually by Carmen Ng, who's in the house today. And in July this year, we also had another event called Interrogating the Arts, Interrogating the Political through the Arts, where we looked at, this kind of very interesting space between art and politics, right? Where does the big P of politics meet the small p of the political? And for that one, we had like people who were both kind of parliamentarians as well as practitioners. So we had Kok Heng Luen from Drama Box in Singapore, and Ann Lee, the playwright and writer, as well as Omar Ali, who I think is also in the house. Yeah, Omar is there, from KLPAC. That session was also moderated by Carmen Ng and Fahmi Fadzil. So this is really like a kind of ongoing series for us to think about areas that need more discussions. We are not the only group that's doing this. It seems like people want to think more, talk more, discuss more critically. Ridhwan Saidi and gang have been doing their Pesta Playlet, which had a lot of discursive kind of components. I believe Kokman has also been doing lots of things at Pentas projects in discussions around dance as well as theatre. So there really seems to be an appetite to kind of think more and discuss more. Yeah, I'm just gonna introduce Charlene Rajendran, who will talk a little bit about the frame for today, the general frame. Charlene is a dramaturg, an educator, theatre practitioner, who's now based in Singapore, originally Malaysian, still Malaysian, I think. Yeah, still Malaysian, still Malaysian. She teaches in the National Institute of Education in the Nanyang Technological University. She's been there for almost 2 decades, Shal? Yeah, almost 2 decades. And she's also the co-director of the Asian Dramaturgs Network. So in a way, this event is a kind of parallel or satellite event of ADN, which I think Shal will talk a little bit more about. Shal.
Okay, thank you very much, Mark, and thank you everyone for being here. Yeah, as a co-director of Asian Dramaturgs Network, it's a real pleasure for me to be at this event and one of the moderators, because the keynote that you will hear later from Janet Pillay was first presented in May at an ADN conference, which was part of the Singapore International Festival of Arts. And it's really interesting to find ways in which things get relocated and rethought through and kind of opened up depending on a different context and a different group of people. So I just wanted to frame a little bit about this conversation so that, one, we're not overwhelmed by terminology. This word dramaturgy creates indigestion sometimes, and people kind of go, what's it all about? I'm not a dramaturg. And I once talked about how Southeast Asians, particularly Malaysians and Singaporeans, are dramaturgs, whether we know it or not, but food dramaturgs. So if someone said to you, I need a 2-day plan of what to eat in Penang, in KL, in Singapore, in Muar, in Taiping, wherever, people will leap to it and have a plan. And they will argue about what's the best plan, why this needs to be chosen and that needs to be left out, depending on the person who's attending the tour, if there are allergies or there are certain ways in which they don't like particular things, things will get chosen according to this work. And that's dramaturgy. It's looking at composition, it's looking at structure, it's looking at framing, and of course, content in relation to culture and context and individuals, who's your audience, etc. So the work of dramaturging is not alien to us at all. And as we'll hear later in the work of people who are doing it either as dramaturgs or doing it as practitioners, and later even in Janet's keynote, you'll see that actually this word has been infused into the work that people have been doing for a long time, from traditional practitioners all the way till today. So one is, what's the role then and the value of having someone called a dramaturg in the room, if at all? And that role also depends on culture and context. So at our first Asian Dramaturgs Network conference, we asked people who came from different parts of Asia, what word do you use? Because you're not speaking in English most of the time and not using this word dramaturg. And there were different responses, but the one that stayed with me the most, perhaps because my only other language apart from English is Malay, was from Indonesia, where Heli Minati, who's a dance dramaturg there, talked about how they first started using the word pendamping, right? To sit alongside and accompany and provide another voice. And then they felt that this was too gentle, too soft for some kinds of work that was going on. And so another word came about, and it was pengganggu. So already we see how you can think about it as provocateur, or you can think about it as critique, or whatever, but how languages then open up spaces for thinking about what is this role that people might want to include in the creative team for particular kinds of production, and who might be the best person amongst the acquaintances or colleagues or collaborators of the artist who can play that role. And of course, now there are very different kinds of dramaturg. There's the dance dramaturg, there's the textual dramaturg, which is more conventional. Then you have now what is called the performance dramaturg, compared to the relational dramaturg, and so on and so forth, right? It really doesn't matter anymore. What matters is what kinds of value a person might bring who plays this role, and what kind of value do we bring as theatre makers or performance makers to a production if we develop a dramaturgical sensibility. What gets better? What gets deeper? What gets stronger if we take it on, the rigors of it and the discipline of it and the questions, whether it's through exploration and experimentation, through research and archiving and documentation and looking at that, or whether it's just about what some people call an attentive presence in the room. I like to refer to it as a listening dramaturg, where someone intensifies the work of paying attention to what is going on without having the responsibility of an artist who makes choices about what happens next. So there are different ways and different languages and different ways to talk about what goes on, and we will hear that today. So I think what we really want to do today is create a space where that kind of conversation about what is happening, what people think they're doing, and what people would like to be doing or would like to be thinking about doing, maybe even, can occur. Then listen to someone who has got a body of work that stretches back to the 1970s, before many of you here were born, and then talk more openly as a wide group. So it's really about conversations that can occur within ourselves, between each other, and with a wider group. So Mark's going to then tell us a little bit more about the structure and frame for today.
Sure. I mean, in the first hour, what we've done is we've invited like 6 speakers, 6 people who kind of have a curiosity, a desire, and are doing dramaturgy. You know, 2 out of these 6 people, including myself, call themselves dramaturgs, and 4 don't. Right. So already it suggests that the idea of dramaturgy can be practiced in very diverse ways. People have multiple entry points. So we'll hear from J.S. Wong, Sandee, Tung Jit, Ren Xin, Ridhwan Saidi, and myself. And this will be moderated by Charlene and myself. And what will happen is that, you know, we'll ask them to talk about a very specific project. I think all of you have this little leaflet, booklet. It already has information about the project. So with each pair, we would like to talk to them about 15 minutes. So the basic information is there. We're going to dive straight in. Yeah, just so that you know the contextual background. In the second hour, we have a lecture which Janet Pillay will be giving. This is the one that Charles has been referring to, and Charles will be moderating this session in the second hour, looking at maybe a kind of macro dramaturgy that Janet has been thinking about over her career. And really in the last hour, our rough plan is really to break up into 3 groups for no other reason really than just numbers, so that we can hear each other think, you know, and just have conversations related to the questions that I think Hui Ting has sent out to you, right? The questions are, just in case you don't have them on you, do we think that having a dramaturg in the creative team is a practice that needs more attention and focus in Malaysia, and why? In what situations is it particularly useful or necessary to have a dramaturg? And what is the role of a dramaturg or dramaturgy skills in relation to social political context? So, you know, we can talk about other things as well in these little groups. All right, so we'll go on for about 45 minutes in the last hour. And the last 15 minutes is just, maybe we'll get back into a big circle and we can just share what particularly resonated, what particularly important takeaways that kind of resonate in this space, and what questions might be left for the future, for future events, for future practice, for future thinking. Yeah, and that's really the structure of the event for today. Okay. So what we would like to do now is actually to invite J.S. Wong and Sandee Chu up here for now to join us. I just wanted to introduce them a little bit differently from what is already in the bio, and then we can get a kind of conversation going. So it's very interesting that in this first pair, we have 2 people who self-identify as dramaturgs, in the sense that their names keluar sebagai dramaturg in the production credits on websites and on the program book and things like that. And JS has been working as a dance dramaturg for several years, and it's a practice that he's also thinking about in a kind of scholarly context in university. And of course, this is not in the bio, but I think it's important to note that as the artistic director of DPAC for several years, and in his work with My Dance Alliance, he initiated quite a lot of different programs where he acts as a dramaturg or as an artistic mentor for young artists, some of who are here today. Yeah, initiating projects such as the DNA project at DPAC, as well as dramaturging for younger or emerging choreographers, projects like Dancing Solo, Dancing Together, Dancing in Place. Yeah, and Sandee is a very special and rare overlap as a lighting designer and as an actor, someone who has both experience behind the scenes in design, in technical, as well as on stage. And over the last few years, Sandee has been doing a lot of device works in kind of ensembles, and I think she will talk about this process. Yeah, just some interesting, very quick overlaps. Besides the fact that both identify as dramaturgs, they're going to talk about 2 productions that, in very different ways, look into death, grief, and life. The Dead Bird in the case of JS, and Dust in the case of Sandee. And these projects were actually motivated initially by personal loss of the artistic kind of leaders or directors or choreographers in the group. So I believe Yolai Chi is in the house today, and she was motivated to do this project after her Buto master Yukio Waguri passed away. And in the case of Sandee, the director that she was working with, Esther Chu, lost 2 grandparents. Esther Liu lost 2 grandparents very quick within space of a week. So these works come from quite personal trajectories. And both productions just happen to have 5 performers on stage who were involved in co-creating, co-choreography and devising. So we thought this was an interesting accident that this has happened. But really within this particular first 15 minutes, we're really looking at dramaturgy within the frame of making a show, a production. And then we'll go somewhere else after that. Yeah. So JS or Sandee, could you guys share with us a little bit about your role within these projects, The Dead Bird, as well as Dust, and how you entered into this dramaturgical role?
Before my sharing, officially, I've kind of called myself, being called as dramaturg only once for The Dead Bird. But with the similar role, I'm actually playing this kind of mentorship, which in different programs, right, mentorship of young artists, choreographers in making their work. It's just the degree of engagement is different. Maybe I don't need to help for researching, but in terms of the questioning, I'm playing the role who always question them, why this, why that, why not this, is that better? So this is a similarity in terms of the function of me as the dramaturg. So in this particular project, The Dead Bird, basically as a dramaturg, I go through the 3 phases of performing art making: the pre-rehearsal, which is the development of production concept, and the rehearsal, which is the finalizing of the work from the choreography to design concept, and the production week, which is the final touch with design elements and technical support. So I will share based on these phases. So in the first phase of pre-rehearsal, my role is to assist in the shaping of the performance text through the process of defining the choreographic background, concept, theme, and dramatic structure. So in order to do so, I'm basically act as a questioner. I think I'm almost the question person in mobilizing questions, not just for myself, but for everyone in the creation team. So there are a few types of questions that I can share roughly. So first, to find out the choreographic content, I'll mostly ask, so what is inspired the choreographer to do these productions? Because as an outsider who know nothing about the productions at first, so my first discussion with the chief choreographer, Anachi, centered on her artistic inspirations. The title of the performance is set, so The Dead Bird, and her inspirations is a series of bird-related images and incidents of death, without much direct connection at first. So she has this image of dead bird in her heart, and an owl that keep following her during a retreat, and the passing of a Buddha master, and her feeling to quit dancing after the death of the Buddha master. But what does that mean? How she's going to frame that? At that moment, she's unclear, and my role is help her to find actually the content of that piece. So secondly, I will ask, so what's the inspiration about? So besides listening, basically I ask further questions related to these images, and also discussing on anything that I can think of surrounding the image of birds or the theme on death. So our conversation is aimed to stimulate the choreographic directions from both our perspective. So it's not only her perspective. I try to share my perspective as well. And then, however, the core concept of the choreography at that time remains unclear. So thirdly, I also ask, what is the production direction? So that I have some idea what kind of method or what kind of style of dancing is that, such as the style of performance. As I'm not a practitioner in Buto, I have to find out if a very strictly Buto performance, am I capable to be the dramaturg? Or what do I need to equip myself in order to get into that place? Who are the cast and designer? And lastly, to also identify my role, even though I say yes, I can be a dramaturg, I still need to identify what are the actual expectations of dramaturg in these productions. I did share my understanding of the possible responsibility of dramaturgy based on my past experience in writing and researching on dramaturg. However, there's no conclusions after that sharing, because this is a new working relationship for both of us. So what we are sure is that we share our trust, and she needs an artistic mentorship, and I'm willing to take the role. That's all. That's how we started. And then to end this pre-rehearsal phase, I switched my role from questioner to become a researcher in finding supporting resources. So as a choreographer who is interested to draw content from the book, The Universal Tree and the Four Birds. So I need to research and study about it and propose further readings, images, thoughts to broaden the scope of discussions. So this is the pre-rehearsal phase. After the end of this research and brainstorming period, the choreographer had drafted a structure of the dance. Then my questioning mood returns. So based on the proposed structure, some of my concerns for us to dive into would be the reasoning behind the structure, the clarifications and the meaning or message in each sections, and the possible challenge just by looking at the draft structure, such as how to connect the 5 separate solo, because they use 5 choreography and they will have their own solo. So then what is the relationship of these 5 different characters? How to put these 5 dancers with a distinct style in one choreography? And are they imitating bird literally in the work? Because they're called the dead bird. And then they're playing the role of bird. So are they being the bird? And what is the degree of abstractions? Because to talk about dance, it's not acting. So how can we find a fine line that we both agree on to work on that? So I don't get a clear answer on this question, because it's more to stimulate areas to be taken care in the process of making. So in the rehearsal phase, my role is to define the performance text of the choreography through examining the logic and development of the movement, the intention and the dramatic structure of each dance sections and the work as a whole, and the incorporations of design elements such as costume, prop, set, and maker. Then in order to do so, I need to switch being an outsider, I, which is watching the rehearsal outcome as if I know nothing about the choreography. Then at the same time, I need to have inside eye. Does the choreography fulfill the choreographer intention? So I need to contribute my objectivity in analyzing the work in progress material and discovering problem and proposing solutions. There is another phase of questioning for me. So questioning kind of my keyword. The first questioning is to find out what is it. The second questioning could be review. And then the third layer to critics. So the moment, but in a more critical and yet practical mood for the second phase. So some of my concern is what is the particular dance about? What do you want to express? The dance, if the dance is about desire, what is the desire? What movement motive is working and what is not? And why is, this is look unclear for me. If you want to go to this, what are the possible solutions, A, B, C? But the final decision is up to the choreographer. I hold no responsible and no power to say, you must go to that. So I cannot enforce my personal artistic choices, preference, and aesthetic, especially I'm myself also a choreographer. So I need to switch off that side of me. I can propose, but okay, this is what I think, and you may make your decisions. If go on, then I suggest how to make it towards what you want to achieve. So lastly, the production week is the most critical moment, as the choreographer is the performer as well as the producer of the productions. So imagine she herself have to run out the ticketing and then solve this and then that at the time doing technical rehearsal. So I actually share her responsibility in proposing solution to the technical support, such as the design of the site and lighting. I also need to suggest the performance of the use of set, the use of space, and the performance quality. For choreography, I propose minor adjustments that are needed to suit the space and the design elements. During the run-through, I have to oversee the coordination between these technical and the dramatic elements of the performance. And then most of the time, I'm the coordinator of the, or the mediator between the SM, designer, and the choreographer. So basically, that are my role.
Thanks very much, JS, for giving us a really comprehensive kind of overview, really, of like the role and the kind of responsibilities and also the kind of space that is given or provided for the artists in this particular case. I mean, this notion of different layers of questioning at different stages of development or process or production is also a really interesting one to think about. I want to go directly to Sandee. Sandee, if you could share with us what are the kind of dramaturgical skills that were needed in a project like Dust. Just as a preface, I mean, this was I think, first directorial work by Esther, a full-length directorial work.
Directorial work.
And many of the performers are also quite new or fairly recent entrants into theatre as well.
Actually, everyone in the production, including myself, it was the first time we were performing our roles in that capacity. So we may be actors or lighting designers for many years or whatever, but it's the first time I'm also calling myself a dramaturg. This is the first and only production that I've ever called myself a dramaturg. And also you had performers who were quite seasoned, but it's probably their first full-length device production, and something that also delved into very personal and very extensive kind of work. It's not just like, oh, we're just going to collaborate on a few devising things and then put it on. This one, it kind of, they were involved in the writing, in the thinking of like the potential expressions of that story, and then do we keep it, do we not keep it, why are we doing it, why are we not doing it. And so one of the key skills, I think, is actually listening and seeing things as it is. Because it's very easy, it's like, okay, we want to get on the work. So you have a framework, and then I want to do this, and you're sometimes listening in order to, I want to fit this in here, I want to fit this in here, and fit this in here. But the nature of Dust was also, Esther, it was a very, very quick process. She had like a month to decide before callbacks, and then 4 months to devise the show, put it up. And at the same time, and that was like when her grandparents passed away, it was a month before I think we were going to start rehearsals or callbacks. I couldn't remember which one. So it was really, really quick, and she was just compelled to do this, but what it is, don't know. I had to ask a lot of questions, and to, is it this? Then in the end, it was, I want to choose my actors and the story and decide from there. And so, fine. So we also have that. And then also at the same time, why is she doing this? And throughout the whole process, it was listening to what's happening on the floor. And then, okay, we wanted to go this way, but this is how the actors are responding. Like got one part where Esther was very interested in the financial burden of death, especially for the family members. But for some reason, the actors, it didn't really latch on to that. And so we had to let that go. Or like, I understand of maybe when we are devising, you might have a lot of physical interaction or exercises and stuff. The actors didn't necessarily latch onto that, but they were very artistic in terms of drawing, coloring and stuff. So we thought maybe if we can incorporate some of that. And so even in the structure of the rehearsal process, it was changing on day to day. And my role, which is what I used to understand dramaturgy, was always like more background, information, connecting society with the themes and with the actors and the creative team. This one, it went into a lot of process as well. Okay, this is how this actor approach work. This is how they may understand collaboration. So you cannot assume that when you say it's an open space, they may understand open space the same way as you. And also, you can say that it's an open space, but are you practicing open space? So then I find that a lot of it was also articulating the framework, helping with the scope, the structure, then after that also having this ability to step back, and then as it's going along, it's like, oh, no, we say we're doing this, but we're actually doing this. You say that this is this, but you know, this is what your either your energy or your the way you might be, the language that you're using might be implying something else. So you can say that, yes, you can come and criticize me, or you can say whatever you want and it's an open space, but then if you're like, you shut that down, then people in this industry, which is already so used to top-down, will, okay, no, it's not that safe actually. Or there was also people with different types of personal stories and different types of values, and so and different types of communication styles. So sometimes some people are a little bit more straightforward, some people are a bit more polite, and some people like to kind of meander before they get to the point. And so it was to negotiate all these and the sensitivities along that, and at some point the director has to also actually embodies the spirit of that. If you say that this is the culture you want in this space, actually you can say it, but they are half the time people are reading your energy, the words you use, what you're doing. And so then my job sometimes will be like, oh yeah, Esther, you said this, but actually because you keep latching on to this, people may people are thinking that, oh, this is only what you want. Then it's like, if you use this word, people are actually thinking this, or something like that. Or at some point it's you were trying to do this, but to be honest, this is what we are actually doing. Let's confront it. Do we want to fight it? Do we want to go with it? Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Sandee. I think Sandee's pointing out to us, notions of language and even body language in the rehearsal space and the sharing space. I mean, different literacies, really, right? And entry points. And how does a dramaturg work alongside the director and choreographer to kind of create this space where things are a little bit more equalized. I know there's a lot of problems around equality in the rehearsal room, but it's one of the notions that we can think about. Maybe a question for both of you, and then we will invite the other pair up. Like, what, with the benefit of hindsight, right? What would you guys do differently? Like 1 or 2 things in The Dead Bird or Dust, because dramaturgs also make mistakes, and we also have to be reflexive and think about missteps and things that we would have done differently.
If I would do differently, I think I will join the rehearsal more frequent, because in this production particular, due to scheduling, I'm actually not part of the working process between the choreographer, chief choreographer, and then choreographer. But means that I have no idea what are the tasks they're looking at, and how they come up with that material they show me. So what I see there is really certain structure, but is that the best directions? Is there anywhere that can push it further? I have no idea. But if I can do it differently, I think maybe to sit in more frequently in the rehearsal can help to shape the discussions more directly at the first time, so that we can walk along the way to the end. But there's a pro and con. That means I'm get too inside of it, then it's difficult for me to get outside, right, without knowing the process. So, but without trying, I have no idea. So it could be something that I work on. Second one is, I think I never review my role as a dramaturg in this production with the creator. So I also suggest myself to do a review in a casual, not like, okay, now criticize me or criticize what. Because I wonder whether I'm doing too much, or I'm not doing enough, I'm not doing something that is needed, or I'm doing something that is not needed. I'm doing something that is not her concern. It's just me get bored. And yeah, I don't know. Because it's 2 different persons. No matter how trust we are, we never have a conversations about that. It could be after the productions, but or it could be, I think, in the middle of productions to just casual touch on that.
Thanks, JS. Sandee?
For me, it was, half of it was things that also I cannot control, which is time and experience level, and including myself. And but one of the main things that in hindsight now I can say is, like, because we were dealing with personal stories, one of the things that we were not sure is, like, are we being too concerned about, being true? Is it not? Should we be, are we not bold enough, or are we too bold? Are we what? But it's like when you deal with personal stories, you do need to give that time, and you cannot shortcut it. The process of permission is an ongoing process. And then it's like, who does that story ultimately belongs to, and how you tell that story, and why you tell that story. And in every juncture, it will require some kind of conversation. And it is tedious. And this was like something that I was struggling throughout as well, because I was like, am I maybe too process orientated? Am I asking too many questions? Oh, I'm too concerned, blah, 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 blah. And then during that same process was actually the ADN conference. And so I went there, and it really helped me give context to the blurriness of my role and the expectations of my role as dramaturg, especially when it's not established by the production. And it was something that, because Esther and I also, we were like, okay, she needed a soundboard, and I felt like she needed a soundboard, so I jumped on board. My role kind of like expanded, and like, the boundaries of that and the expectations was shifting as it went along. And then on top of that, the challenge of what we were actually undertaking was actually quite big, because there's the personal stories, and then on top of that, you're not actually only taking actors, you're taking people who can like devise and create work and then own that work own that work is also an important thing because you're going to face a public audience that may care about what you're saying or not. And at the same time, you are also going to face audience who also have their personal stories and their perspective of can be a very personal subject and issue in their lives. Just knowing that this is the dauntingness of that task, and to like, okay, then yeah, just go through the steps. Just go through the steps and honor that steps. And it's difficult, yes, and this is especially so when you are like running out of time and you're like, things are not working, and that's even more, you're like, I want to get, and one of the 5 steps, JS talked about 5 steps, one of the 5 steps that helped me keep that structure was a device guru that I learned from. His name is David Glass, has this 5 steps called preparation, origination, organization, manifestation, and reflection. And he always says, when push comes to shove, we always cut out preparation and reflection. But actually that is the one that actually holds the production together when shit hits the fan. And like and we did, and we had like fires after another, because sometimes you're lucky, people do not confront you, and like the director was confronted on every issue. We had burst out, we had like people saying that, did you overstep boundaries? Did we honor this? Did you not honor this? So it was, was this show even has Esther's point of view? So as it went along, I was like also, yeah, and then don't know, yes, I know, yes, I know. And then in the end, I was like, and it was an important thing to know why. That's when you go back, when it goes to the reflection, our post-mortem. When I asked Esther, what did you want to honor? I want to honor the actors, what they wanted to express in the stories. And I remembered that she said she wanted to work with what the actors were bringing in. So yes, her production did not have a strong Esther Liu's like imposing vision or something like that. But she was actually honoring what she had intended to do, which is a more curatorial role, and it should have featured, and the voice that had to be strong were the 5 voices of these actors. And this was benefit of hindsight, but also experience from like watching other productions, because I was thinking of like January Lowe's production, where it was a personal production. And it's true, Ghaffir Akbar was the director, but that production was January's voice, and it had to be January's voice. So that was one of the things that helped as well. So yeah.
Oh, great. I mean, thanks a lot, Sandee, for sharing, and JS, for these. I mean, as you guys were talking, I was thinking a lot about acupuncture. No, I'm serious, because like we're dealing with different pressures. Pressures in the rehearsal room, pressures in human beings, pressures with their memories and histories, right? And at what point do we like press so that the pressure is more, because we need pressure in the rehearsal room, but at what times are there also places to kind of release the pressure and to kind of like step back, which I think Sandee spoke about a lot. And of course time, is extremely pressuring. And I have a 20 minutes there. Thank you very much. Nicely done, Darren. Can I just invite you guys to exchange places with Ren Xin, as well as Tung Jit, who is all the way at the back, so that we can have different perspectives.
Yeah, and while they're coming to sit down, I just want to highlight 2 things that were raised just now, which is actually the translation work that goes on. Not just translation from one language to another, but from one experience to another. And the other thing that came up, which keeps coming up in the question of what to do and not do, is the ethical considerations. Particularly when there are personal stories, but also in relationships, because the negotiation of relationships and the ethics of that can become a place where the dramaturg finds huge amounts of pressure, to use what Mark is saying about that acupressure, but also conflict and paradox about what to intervene with or not intervene.
Now, for the next section of this session, we have Ren Xin and Jit Yang, who I was trying to find some similarities, but basically only both trained in New York. That's about it. Okay, like cannot find more connection. But I think both stay in PJ, went to New York, okay? But what is interesting, I guess, is that on the surface, little appears to connect both. But actually, the reason we are trying to put them together to talk is because both, in a ways, we think, Charlene and I, and yeah, we think that maybe they are trying to chart new directions in their own work. Yeah, so Ren Xin, as some of you might know, is a dancer choreographer who is independent and works with many different platforms, companies, houses. But over the last maybe 18 months, she has been thinking a lot about dancing, walking, being in her own Taman, you know, where dance is not so obviously visible or seen. And she's been thinking a lot about that. So in a way, for Ren Xin, is a kind of self-dramaturgy that we're inviting her to kind of think about. And for Jit Young, you know, he's one of 4 resident directors at KOTAK, big institution, right? And we're inviting him to kind of talk about the new play project where, as a young director, you know, like alamak tak nak lah Usman Awang lagi, Nordin Hassan lagi, KS Maniam lagi. I mean, one, but as a young director, he wanted like new contemporary plays that he could work with playwrights, invite them, go through a long gestation process. Of course, these are efforts that have also been done in the past. First Works, ICT, Drama Lab, one by one. Can I please invite either one of you to talk about these processes of dramaturgy? Jit Young, do you want to go? I mean, yeah, so these two don't call themselves dramaturgs, but we see that they take on dramaturgical functions. So what led to, what was the process like behind pulling together these 4 writers?
Thank you for having me. So the new play project started because I came back from America after studying. I was like, where the playwrights, I want to do a new KL Malaysian play. You know, it's hip and cool to do a new play, right? Yeah, it was just a hard time finding. I love Usman Awang. I don't know what you're talking about. But yeah, it was very easy to come across the legends and the great names, of course, the ones that have already been published. Yeah, around me, I didn't know anyone who was like coming up and coming. So I studied in New York. So in New York, a lot of people were just like, whatever lah, I'll just do it anyway. You know, a lot of that kind of energy. Yeah, I haven't written a play yet. I'm gonna do it anyway. Get some friends, hire a space, GoFundMe, come watch my show. I'm a theater maker now, right? But here in Kia, it's very, you must be published. You know, plays for me, I felt like they exist. A lot of new work comes out and then suddenly it disappears. No one was kind of publishing, and there was no. So yeah, that's how I started the new play project. Kind of just like where are playwrights of KL? What's the exciting things coming up? And so yeah, we had an open call. Anybody who had an idea they wanted to put into a full-length work. It was very important for me that I wanted full-length works in this new play project because I feel we had a lot of like 10-minute stuff, smaller stuff, but we didn't have like a big, an anthology. Yeah. So open call. Then we finalized with 5 playwrights and published 4 of them at the end of the 1-year process. Ridhwan Saidi and Juno Oi Hui Fen, 2 of the playwrights are here. And so far it's been great. Ridhwan Saidi's work Mautopia has been read in Jakarta, I think, Indonesia. Recently, Juno's work I brought to Russia. It's being staged right now in KL, in Subang Loteng Theatre 360. So it's got some life after publishing, and now we've got the great anthology. And it's book 1, so to challenge myself for book 2, book 3, like an iPad, book 11. We see.
I mean, really quick question. Like, you know, you're trained as a director and you work as a director.
Mm-hmm.
So what, for lack of a better term, dramaturgical skills were necessary to go through this long process, you know, with 4 very different playwrights, and they are very different plays.
For some time now, even now, I guess, I was thinking about this. I was like, driving here, I was like, oh, what are the questions going to be? Very difficult, huh? I need some metaphors and similes. And so for the new play project, I kind of like physics a lot. So Large Hadron Collider is kind of like the idea I came up. The Large Hadron Collider. So it's that big pipe where they smash two particles together at like super fast speed and see what comes out, right? So yeah, I got my 5 playwrights and then put them in a Large Hadron Collider. Okay, and then let's read some Aristotle. Then pow pow pow. What comes out of that? Let's read some Brecht. Pow pow pow. And then I mean, it's not that exciting, but for this talk, it's important to kind of illustrate
Get
that.
excited.
But yeah, that was the idea. So the playwrights would challenge each other. They would like question and like, what is this? What's this? And then I had some playwriting experience when I was studying. So yeah, just some writing exercises, prompts, just get writers to like, try things out. Then we got master classes as well. So in the master classes, I wanted kind of like a trans-generational thing. I wanted the kind of the superstar legends, big shots of KL to come and see these up-and-coming playwrights, see what we can get from this. Again, Large Hadron Collider. So we got Harish Sharma, we got Joe Kukatas, we had Namron to come and give masterclass sessions. We got some actors involved quite often to work working on the floor. So it's, dramaturgical wise is Large Hadron Collider. Just
Very big and powerful metaphor.
Oh, is it? Okay.
No, and eventually, in case people don't know, they were staged as kind of rehearsed readings, right? In KOTAK, stage readings, and the publication is out. You can get it there later.
Yeah, thank you. 40 ringgit there.
Yep. We'll do that later.
Much appreciated.
Can I go to Ren Xin? Ren Xin, a very different project from studio and black box to Taman, your own Taman.
Okay, so actually before today I didn't, but anyway, this occasion made me try to think more about what are the dramaturgy happenings in this project that I was doing. I think a lot of what I needed and found myself doing, and friends around me who have conversations with me, is tracking actually what am I doing. So I started out actually just walking. I started out with a form, the ritual of walking, and then later on dancing. And then I think slowly tracking actually what am I doing with that ritual. Is it I want to induce some kind of response from the locals or residents, or is it more personally for myself to research something about the body and spaces, different spaces? And then I think from tracking what happens over a few weeks, then I feel like the dramaturgy goes into maybe I want to know where it's done in this space. So then what kind of method or what kind of how should the ritual change so that I could, how to go and find this, if this is the question. After a few weeks, again, because it's a live space and people change, it's a constant site, but a lot of things are changing and people are not always there at that time. So then I will find myself, or because of conversation, interaction with people, I find myself doing something other than what I planned. And then there's again the checking in of, is this maybe then what I would like to do, and how to do it even more focus point? So, but just a small example, like because I was talking to a management of a flats block, and they offered me to have a day one to work with children once a week. So that was what happened for 5 months. But after the 5 months, I realized that actually the day one was not a good choice for my whatever I was trying to do, which is because in the first place I was trying to make visible mobility and bodies in space. So when we go into the day one, then that it's already not visible at all to things. And also I was researching something about direct relationship with the environment that we live in. So the day one becomes a four wall that is actually a no place. So things like that make me, I think this kind of checking in every few weeks and talking to friends around. Sorry, I just add one thing. And also another, I think, dramaturgy is trying to understand what image or what people, the locals are reading from what I'm doing or how I dress when I do certain things. So something like that.
I mean, I get the sense that there's a very strong kind of locational dramaturgy as well, right? So you have a particular process, but then the space or the taman that you are working in has its own rhythms, you know, and it has its own kind of like logics and structures which you are also responding and corresponding to constantly, and that influences, that changes during the course of a day. I mean, are there enough women bodies out there? When do the migrants come back from work late at night? These are things that we had talked about previously. For both of you, I mean, like, and both are actually long-term ongoing projects. Ren Xin has been doing this for 18 months, more or less, starting from walking and observing to now working with some members of the community. Because these are ongoing processes, what will change, do you think? What anticipated changes will happen? And Jit Young, in your case, new play project 1, but you are already fielding, I think, for number 2, you know? So what will change?
For the new play project, I'm hoping to even bring to existence a book 2. It's expensive, publishing. Book is expensive. So yeah, just looking to see how can we even bring it to fruition, if that's a possibility. How to not make too much losses. The books are now in bookstores, trying to like establish like deals with publishers. So it's very logistical right now. But in terms of artistically, I really enjoyed what happened with book 1. I really felt like, you know, there's a concrete proof that, or not proof, but yeah, there's a concrete collection of works coming out from, you know, KL. It's going to be in Singapore's bookstore soon as well. So yeah, in book 2, I think just more vigorous. And now with hindsight, right? Yeah, better planning, organization, but still stepping into that same energy. Like, what's the creative potentials of KL? What are the plays out there, the stories that are going to come out? Yeah, really tapping into that again. Another physics thing. Yeah, I can. Dramaturgy. Right, I was just thinking a lot about it because I feel like dramaturgy is, a lot of people talk about seeing and listening, kan? So I feel like dramaturgy is just like a field, you know, it just happens. Like it's like there's a term called the observer effect in physics. Like phenomena, it just exists, but by observing the phenomena changes. Your work changes by paying attention to that phenomena. Right, so as soon as Ren Xin kind of observes, how does my body move in the day 1 instead of not? I think that's already dramaturgy already. So right, you just kind of observers of phenomena, and even if you do not look at it, it's still there. We don't care how our audience now is one-sided and we are on one end of the proscenium, right? But once you take that into consideration, then it becomes something you have to kind of either decide to you want to change or not. But yeah, it's like the observer effect for me. So in terms of like my dramaturgy is really for the new play project, book 2 is really again looking, paying attention to those stories, the seeing of that, contemporary KL. Speed up. Okay, that's it.
Very quickly, very recently, I just started a slightly new phase, which is the same daily ritual of working on site, but I invited another dance friend to join in. So there's 2 of us, and I feel already immediately it's a very different reading between a solo woman moving around and 2-person. Then suddenly people become, oh, it's a thing. It's not just somebody just doing something. And I think also the other phase that we're starting is to make It's not a mad woman. Then the other one is like making conversation, talking to different people about their personal relationship with dance or not, whether it's comfort, discomfort, or maybe the grandmother or the K-pop or something. Also, I think the other one I'm thinking about right now is to even narrow, not just to a smaller site, but targeting right now between the local and migrants to find through different conversation about different dance. So I think I'm also trying to target a little bit narrower, just to go deeper with particular members of the site.
Great, thank you, Ren Xin. Shall any kind of immediate reactions?
Yeah, thank you for the physics metaphors. I think that just takes us somewhere else. And it's useful because what it made me think about in both instances is how what happens is something gets intensified and something gets heightened, and that collects a certain kind of energy, it draws a certain kind of energy to it, right? In the public space in your case, but in the imaginative space in your case. And as a result of that, whatever comes out of it has a slightly more intense version of itself, which I think is valuable when so much is trivialized and downplayed and made mundane in the negative sense. I mean, the ordinary is very powerful and it's very valuable, but then what you're doing is kind of thickening the space. And I think that's one of the things that a dramaturgical sensibility does do. It thickens the dialogue, it thickens the space, hopefully towards distillation, not just to become, muddy, etc. Yeah.
I'll just briefly introduce Ridhwan anyway. Ridhwan writes a lot of plays now. That's basically it. Ridhwan's got this series of theatre modular and also theatre normcore, right? That he has been staging I think always in different buildings, different spaces. Most people do not know this, but actually Ridhwan was trained as an architect. So there's a kind of spatial logic or spatial dramaturgy to a lot of the way he chooses venues. And I think he doesn't go back to the same venue. Betul.
Kita cuba limitkan like setahun sekali. Ada kuota.
Right. So yeah, if they perform here, they don't come back to KOTAK until like some time has passed and so on and so forth. Yeah. But also his work, crosses into film and cinema, and actually his background is as a writer and novelist. Yeah. How do we want to do this?
I suppose somebody should introduce you, Mark.
Yeah, I'm Mark Tay, and I'm a member of Five Arts Center, and I make performances. And I'm not a dramaturg, but I can see how my work might take on dramaturgical structures. And Janet Pillay is specifically asked me to talk about the complete futures of Malaysia in this context, which is a project I've done like over several years with some people in this room. I just forgot to mention that for Ridhwan, we're talking about literature, which is coming out of a cultural mapping project that he did with Aizam and Zikri Rahman from the group Literacity, where they map short stories, novels, poems from 1970s to now within a 5 km radius of KL. And then from this research, they do very interesting interventions and projects from that. Charlene, ask us questions.
Okay, sure. So maybe I'll ask Ridhwan first. Your work is very conceptual, bringing in ideas about literature, the space, and then responding with different kinds of performance, different ways in which an audience engages, participates, walks around, tours. So when you're making these concepts and you're putting it together, what are some of the questions you are asking and you are wanting to deal with when you make these projects?
Untuk literatur, bila saya fikir macam mungkin boleh macam mana? Literatur, tur tu tua lah dalam bahasa Melayu, dalam kamus Dewan tur tu tua. Jadi apa yang saya fikirkan? Mungkin bagi saya nak cuba bagi shape lah, kalau terutamanya dalam kes literatur ni, sebab dia sangat open-ended, sebab permainan dia kita ada 4 atau 5 artis yang engage dengan 4 teks. So banyak kebarangkalian boleh berlaku dan jadi saya sebagai orang yang macam dapat oversee dari jauh, saya cuba beri satu shape dan bila dia terletak di atas kota, di atas bandar, saya cuba mencari garis lah kot. Sebab kita boleh buat macam-macam shape, kita boleh buat circle, kita boleh buat straight line. Tapi dengan 4 atau 5 benda saya membayangkan di satu line lah. Jadi satu malam kita buat recce bersama dengan artis, masing-masing cuba cari macam mana space yang diorang nak berminat dan ya dari situ saya cuba memikirkan macam mana orang bergerak dari point ke point. Jadi ya yang awal-awal kita dapat macam belakang JKKN ada satu abandoned motorcycle-nya roundabout. Sefa pilih situ. Dia berminat dengan space tu. Kemudian Lim Pek Yin dia akan pilih satu macam planter box dekat pasar seni punya LRT. Dan dari situ dah di lock. Jadi saya cuba memikirkan Lee Kwang dengan Faishali yang tak ada masa raki. Jadi saya cuba dengan dua yang dah lock tu, saya cuba macam apa potensi yang kita boleh pergi. Dari sini nak ke sana lagi atau dari sini nak ke tengah lagi. Jadi dari situ kita plan nak ke Medan Pasar. Jadi bila dah dapat satu line tu dari Medan Pasar ke belakang JKKN roundabouts. Jadi kita ada satu macam naratif lah. Bagi saya asalnya kita macam nak cuba buat start dari belakang roundabout tu ke tengah kota. Tapi kemudian saya fikir balik. Sebenarnya lebih elok untuk start dari tempat public spaces dan kita mula bergerak ke arah yang paling negative spaces dalam kota. Tempat yang orang tak pergi. Sebab saya rasa itu point literature atau point sesuatu namanya kita pergi ke daerah yang paling asing dan kita tak sedar benda tu ada. Jadi dari situ saya rasa penting untuk kita start dari Medan Pasar dan bergerak ke sana. Jadi saya rasa dalam sentuhan literatur ni pilihan nak dari situ ke situ atau situ ke situ saya pilih. Tapi yang lain banyak berbincang lah. Yeah.
So when these discussions happen and a lot of crisscross, joining the dots, making things link in certain ways, how do you deal with clash or disagreement or things not working out? And you plan and you envisage a certain thing, but then what actually happens really is quite different.
Bagi saya berbalik kepada kepercayaan je. Saya percayakan 5 orang artis ni untuk muncul di situasi dan ya saya lebih membayangkan macam tu. Sebab memang ada banyak benda berlaku juga macam masa kita berjalan. Sebab partisipannya 80 orang, 80 orang. Dan bila kita melintas jalan memang kita kacau lalu lintas. Sebab kita tak expect macam ramai macam tu. Jadi bila kita buat tu macam Fashali bermula di Medan Pasar buat macam costume parade dengan ada 13 orang ke yang pakai kostum dari recycle material. Dia akan buat satu scene lah di Medan Pasar. Dan dari situ kita bergerak ke work. Fashali respon pada pemburu kota, TLS type, poetry. Jadi dari situ Goh Lee Kwang, sound bass artist akan respon pada Charlene My Grandmother's Chicken Curry. Lee Kwang akan, dia tak, instead of guna satu point, kita punya experience dalam bentuk lain, maknanya kita punya journey. Lee Kwang ada buat macam DIY sound, mengganggu sound kita lah semasa kita berjalan kat tepi pasar seni tu. So dia distort sound dan kita punya experience adalah kita beramai-ramai berjalan. So the performance adalah satu movement. Kemudian kita sampai di spot seterusnya di mana Lim Pek Yin di planter box tu. Di situ macam ada sedikit gangguan, ada 2 gangguan yang berlaku serentak di mana first itu sebab kita bermain dengan public space dan kita tak tahu sebenarnya public private ni sebenarnya dia sangat, itu sebenarnya tempat private lah sebenarnya. Polis bantuan tak bagi kita ni dan ada 2 orang tu kan handlekan scene tu dan dalam masa sama saya punya masalah pula Lim Pek Yin tak muncul. Sebab dealnya pukul 3 sebab kita plan macam pukul 3 sharp kat sini. Tapi kita dah tersampai awal. Jadi dia macam membingungkan. saya macam apa saya nak buat. Jadi saya cuba nak pass kepada Sefa. Sefa adalah scene yang seterusnya. Dan kemudian tiba-tiba Pek Yin muncul secara ajaib. Jadi dia selesai.
Thank you. So it's like a lot of planning and coordination and then you have to improvise because you don't know really what's going to happen and then you have to play with the negotiation that depends on the people who come lah. Yeah. Mark, maybe we can move to you now. And in this project where also you are working with a wide range of material, you're working with a wide range of notions and putting it together in ways that you find interesting. What drives that to develop this sensibility?
So I think research is what drives my work. And I, during this period, like 2016, 2017, I was reflecting a lot about how, actually, like, I'm not someone who, like, do something and then move on to something very quickly and move on to something. I kind of, like, come back a lot, you know, to certain subject matters or certain areas. And with the Complete Futures of Malaysia, I was interested to obviously map and to research and to question and to think about what had happened to 2020, Malaysia's futures, right? And I also knew at that point in time that because I had been working with collaborators who are involved in design, visual arts, film, activism for a long time, I was interested in not only thinking from performance as a starting point, but multiple sources. So a very simple strategy, and actually it's a form of open source or crowdsourced research, was we were invited to take part in an exhibition called Escape from the Sea in APW. So for 2 months, we just installed some cabinets or some shelves and invited members of the public, anyone, to donate things which they think relate to Malaysia's futures. So if you like, it's a kind of participatory dramaturgy, if we want to use that term, okay? But for us, it was like an open archive. So benda-benda yang ada kaitan dengan wawasan 2020, TN 2050, which at that time Najib was launching, right? Now it's disappeared, and we have, what is it? Shared Prosperity 2030, which Azmin and Mahathir launched 2 weeks ago, right? So the futures, to compare them and to kind of question the worldviews behind them, and actually very often it's the same worldviews because it's the Barisan Nasional worldview. I don't mind saying that. And of course, what was interesting was that people donated and brought all these things together. So from there, we map, and mapping is really central to our work. Faik Shazwan Kuhiri, who is a performer I work a lot with, often says that our work is like trying to capture the internet, you know. And then from there we decide, like, okay, some of this material can go into performances, some of this material can go into exhibitions, some of this material can go into YouTube videos or whatever it was. But at the base of it is really research and thinking about how to think about the future in public and what happened to that future that was proposed back in 1991. Yeah.
And just to follow up on that a bit, when you talk about research, it's not just about books. It's a range of ways in which actually both of you are researching. You're taking what has been published, but also what's in a psyche, what's in a memory, what's in a perception, and what's in a certain kind of way in which public spaces, bodies, ideas, imaginations have a repository. So you're going to very different kinds of repositories to do your research. What informs that for your dramaturgy of what you need and why you need these different kinds of material?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's about organizing different imaginations and different stakeholders, let's say. But the end target point might be just having interesting projects related to articulating Malaysia's multiple futures. So as an example, I think for now, at least our practice, my collaborators and I think working across multiple mediums forces us to think differently. What is the exhibitionary format and its advantages and limitations? What does performance do and where does it not do so well? You know, if we're gonna do a podcast, you know, there's all these kind of things. So sometimes you might be working the same material, but when you put the same material through different formats, it's going to change. It has to change because you are responding to these formats, right? So I'll give you a very clear example. We did an exhibition, we did a performance called Version 2020, but one of the more unusual things we did was we decided to organize a durational event for 4 or 5 hours, and we invited 24 people. Because at that time, Malaysia had 24 ministries. This is back in 2017. So we invited activists, anthropologists, human rights lawyers. I think Dr. Anis was our Minister of Education. Leisha, I think, was our Minister of something, finance maybe. But we had a whole range of people. And the idea is to cast sociological actors, if I can say that. Because a lot of my work also in performance tends to work with people using their own identities. So if you were a minister in Malaysia in the tahun 2063, what would you change? And of course, for 24 people, they I think had about 10 minutes each. It lasted like 5 hours. So it became a really crazy, long, dreamy kind of list of proposals of what could potentially change in Malaysia. And of course, it ranged from like the sublime and the practical to like the really impractical and rude and crazy. But the process to think about that is also about casting. So who do you cast? You have 24 slots. This wasn't announced, but actually we were very conscious that the 24 people, we were casting people from all states in Malaysia. We were casting gender balance. I mean, I'm saying it now, a few years later. We were casting people who are not Malaysians. So one person was a Mexican environmentalist working in Malaysia, and one was a Rohingya refugee NGO worker. So it's like, okay, what is Malaysia in a way, right? And using the dramaturgy of a cabinet, kementerian, as a way to think about dramaturgy. Kalau ada 24, apa fungsi 24 ni? And who could be there? So it ranged from like Dr. Anis and Lesha to Siti Kasim to a Rohingya activist. This is the kind of collage that I often make.
Ridhwan, I mean, as an architect, you're looking at space in a particular way, and then when you make these works, you're looking at space in probably similar but different ways, right? So in a way, you're looking at space also as a resource to rework and find new ways of encountering the space.
How to comment? Tapi but for me memang space tu memang pun karakter juga. Kalau macam bila saya buat teater, space tu memang karakter. Misalnya jadi konsep restage tu macam tak ada dalam fikiran saya sebab selalunya bila saya buat yang bila dia space tu dia mesti dia bukan restage lagi, dia macam setiap space baru memberi karakter baru. Jadi mungkin saya boleh share sikit tentang literatur. Macam yang tadi saya share tu performance artist gabungan teks, bertindak balas dengan teks di atas kota lah di Kuala Lumpur. Itu di tahun 2016. Jadi di tahun 2017 kita ada buat dalam scale yang lebih kecil dengan Chinese Studies student, ada 20-30 orang, dan yang itu kita buat dia lebih macam gastronomical sikit. Kita pergi ke tempat capital, tempat restoran maksum, kita pergi Kudu, tempat Piramli suka makan, kemudian ke Chowkit, tempat puisi T.L.S. Taib. Okey, itu satu 2017. Kemudian kita akan bulan depan kita akan buat lagi satu literatur yang ini lebih autobiographical, di mana kita cuba bekerjasama dengan Siti Zainun, di mana sewaktu kecil dia membesar di Jalan Melayu. Jadi Jalan Melayu tu sangat kecil je, tapi kita dah buat reki hari tu dan dari ceritanya pun sangat menarik bagaimana komuniti Minang sampai di situ. Dan jadi bagi saya banyak literatur ni dia sedikit organik, di mana setiap projek tu dia macam dia bukan satu set macam satu set yang rigid, dia macam dia sangat custom made. Organik, organik. Jadi mungkin itulah dia punya, dan bercakap tentang architecture, memang skill tu amat penting sebab architecture dia boleh sebesar urban planning hingga ke design kerusi. Jadi kita macam untuk saya kena tahu dia punya skill, dan setiap tu pun kalau kita cakap tentang dramaturgy, bagi saya terus fikir structure lah. Dan structure dalam kerusi dan architecture yang menariknya, structure ni sangat literal. Dia macam kalau ni dia roboh, dia macam melibatkan nyawa. Dan bagi saya dalam performance pun bagi saya benda itu penting sebab kalau structure tu roboh, dia akan merosakkan jiwa. Sebab structure tu mesti ada. Dia walaupun macam mana pun mesti ada. Dan dalam macam saya boleh bagi contoh, kalau dalam architecture yang basic, post and beam, ada cantilever, tapi sebenarnya ada banyak lagi macam monocoque structure, macam kapal terbang, kereta. Dan kalau kita tengok alam juga pun macam-macam kan, cengkerang, macam-macam shape tu sangat banyak. Dan setiap structure ada dia punya cara tanggung beban. Dan satu yang saya terfikirlah tentang perkataan dramaturgy ni bila saya masuk teater, bila saya memikirkan satu lagi perkataan baru yang saya belajar, scenografi. Dan scenografi ni bagi saya sesuatu yang sangat tangible. Kita nampak visual perasaan tu, dan bagi saya dramaturgy adalah sesuatu yang amat berlawan dengan scenografi, iaitu sesuatu yang intangible. Kita tak dapat rasa dramaturgy tapi dia ada. Dan bagi saya nampak saya masih memikirkan apa itu dramaturgy sebab dia macam perkataan baru untuk saya, tapi saya membayangkan dia macam sesuatu yang sangat berlawanan dengan scenografi, di mana scenografi sangat visible, sangat ada, tapi dramaturgy sangat invisible, halimunan. Macam itulah. Yeah.
On that very nice note, I think, the idea that when you first talked about shaping something, but then I began to realize as an architect, for you, the shape is very much like you talked about just now. There's a relationship between the visible and non-visible that is much more intelligent than we usually take for granted. So the public space, the dramaturgy of space, I think, architecturally, is something to really think about and spark off into the next phase. Mark, what
That's
do you
right.
think? We've
Yeah, we're actually over time because
way over time.
Yeah, I mean there was a lot to I think discuss with the three pairs. So we won't do that round with everyone because I think that can naturally go into the discussion that we will have in the third section. Why don't we all take some time just to 5 minutes?
Can we thank the
Yes, absolutely.
presenters,
We
please?
want to
Thank you
thank
very
Ridhwan,
much.
JS, Sandee, Ren Xin, and Jit Yang. Thank you.